So I am a 26-year-old male, and I've been planning a camping trip with my wife and dad for a whole year. I wanted everything to be perfect, as we don't get away from town and dive deep into the woods as much as I'd like. This takes place in the very tree-dense Davy Crockett National Forest in East Texas. Earlier that day, my dad decided to go a little early and pick out a good camping spot for us. To give a layout of where we camped, there were 2 dirt roads on either side of us, and an overlook to the north of us. We camped in the middle, between the 2 roads. My wife and I arrived and met my dad down there around 11 a.m. We set up camp and proceeded to enjoy the day until around dinner time, when we started to cook our meal for the evening. Right as we got done with dinner, we see this truck circling around our campsite. He ran around us several times and finally pulled right up into our camp and got out of his truck. He then proceeded to tell us that this was his family's campsite, and how the firewood that was laying around was quote-unquote his. Now, in this particular forest, campsites are first come first serve, and my dad had been here since 9 a.m. He then asked if he could camp next to us, and of course being friendly, we said yes. We didn't know that when he said next to us, he meant directly on top of us. He backed his camper in so close to our tents and vehicles that he blocked my truck in. We weren't sure why he was doing this, being that there were so many other campsites available, but we just shrugged it off and tried to have a good time anyway. Not too long after that, we noticed a white Dodge circling around us. We had an off feeling from this truck because it went around us several times, but we dismissed it because the area we were at was popular due to the overlook. After a long night of drinking and goofing off, we decided to go to bed. I was in bed asleep when out of the woods, I wake up to a blood-curdling scream. I jolt up and ask my wife, "What the heck was that?" About 30 seconds later, we hear another scream off in the distance. At this point, I grabbed my gun and unzipped the tent so we could see out. My dad had left a lantern burning so we could see a little ways into our campsite. At that moment, we see the white Dodge tearing down the road behind us. They continued down the road until they were out of sight. We heard them stop and get out of their truck, slamming the door and screaming. Then, they proceeded to get back in their truck and drive very slowly down the other road that was in front of our campsite. At this point, we were terrified thinking they were coming to rob us, but they kept driving until they were out of sight. Then, we heard them shooting. After the gunshots ended, they sped off. At this point, we thought maybe they were just drunk and acting stupid, so we didn't call the cops. And we didn't have signal anyway. We just tried to go back to sleep. The next day, we had to make a beer run for my dad. When we made it out of the camping area and hit the main highway, there were police everywhere. They had stopped 2 young boys. We assumed they were the ones who were being troublemakers the night before and continued on into town. When we got back to our campsite, the cops were leaving after talking to my dad. They told my dad that the guys in the white Dodge had gone into the young guys' camp while they were hunting and were robbing them. The boys walked up on their campsite being robbed, and the Dodge guys pulled guns on the young boys, proceeding to rob the young boys at gunpoint. We think if it hadn't been for the people that camped right on top of us, as strange as it was, they would have robbed us instead. They made our campsite look bigger than it actually was. The people in the white Dodge were never caught, and I'm thankful we're all still alive, safe and sound. And I just hope we never have to see them ever again.